Hello and welcome. You're listening to Marketing Matters on the Wharton Podcast Network. That's our weekly podcast where we analyze the latest in advertising, retailing, marketing, customer behavior, and new product launches. I'm Barbara Kahn, the Patty and J.H. Baker Professor of Marketing. And my co-host, Americus can't join us today, so I'm alone. But it's going to be an exciting show anyway because we have as our guest, Doug Zarkin. Doug is the first chief marketing officer of Take 5 Oil Change. And before he started this new position, he was at the wellness and fitness service company, Modern Performance and Recovery Brands. It's known for the Good Feet store. And he was chief brand officer there since 2023. And he led a national successful partnership with Katie Couric. Before that, he was CMO of Pearl Vision, which is a Luxottica company. They wrote a Harvard case on that company. And he's held marketing leadership roles at fashion companies like Kellwood, Warnaco, and Limited Brands, as well as the cosmetics brands, Avon. Long marketing history. And now he's at Take 5 Oil Change. Doug, welcome to our podcast.
Barbara, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, I'm really excited to look at your background, to talk to you. Before we talk about Take 5, and I watched that spot, it was very clever. I was thinking, how can you make a lube change clever? But you did it. But before we talk about that, I'm really interested in your career because you've been in marketing and in branding, creating brands for a long time. But over that length of time, how you create brands has changed a lot. We've moved from a traditional branding advertising world to now collaboration, social media. And I'm kind of curious, since you've been at the helm of these big brands for so long, what your take is on the way marketing has changed and the way you execute brands.
You know, it's interesting. While the tools and tactics have certainly changed, I think the fundamentals haven't, which is marketing's purpose is to motivate the consumer to take the action that you would like them to take when you would like them to take it. And that's the what. The how, in terms of how you do that, again, for me at least, has really always centered around this notion of thinking human. The idea of treating every customer that walks into your store, visits your e-com site, or in our case, goes into one of our service centers, as if they're the only car that's coming in that day. And if you build an ecosystem around that and your marketing reflects that ecosystem, you're going to connect with them first emotionally and then rationally. And the reality is that in today's landscape in particular, given so many choices and options, consumers make emotional decisions before they make rational choices. And so it's really our obligation, if we want to take on that huge task, we've got to start with the humility. And the humility really does mean getting into the mindset, capturing that heart, capturing that mind in order to capture that traffic in that business.
Yeah, I understand that concept and I completely agree with it. And I know you've written a book on this and let's get out of the friend zone, and really create brand love. But I'm just curious how you've made the change and how you've learned. I mean, because you started in branding when it was so different. And now it's about social influencers, social media, collaborations. Like, how did that happen? How did you learn how to do that from one?
That's the nicest way somebody's told me that I'm old in a very long time. For me, I think in particular, it used to be a funnel. It used to be a linear funnel.
Right.
And I think today the appreciation is really that it's more like a subway map than a linear funnel, which means that every tool and tactic you really have to recognize its role in the ecosystem. I mean, certainly you're not going to build brand on pay-per-click, but you have to recognize that action isn't confined to what used to be considered to be action-oriented media. Again, for me, it really gets down to that art of sacrifice. If you're trying to say everything, you're going to say nothing. And so working with our creative agencies, our media partners, really developing briefs for channels, not just campaigns, and critically understanding how the ecosystem functions so that every single tool in the toolbox can be a valuable tool in order to achieve the results that we're looking to achieve.
Yeah, I just really want to make this concrete. So let's go to the example of this Take 5 oil change as an example. And I watched that ad. I thought it was a very clever ad. There's a few things. I'm curious where the ad runs, how it works. one of the things that I thought was very interesting was the collaboration with the Brad Pitt movie. How did all that come about? How did you, I mean, that was really, it's interesting. You're advertising the movie as well as your own service, but it
Yeah.
works together in a really interesting way.
I mean, integrations is definitely not a new phenomenon. I think in the case of F1, and again, I'm new to the business, so this partnership predated me, and I give all the credit to the team that's in place today that I now have the pleasure to lead on building that. I think what that movie represents is something that's critical in today's landscape, which is looking for less competitive, cluttered touch points. An integration into a movie allows you the opportunity, if it's done well, to build your educated brand awareness. In an ideal world, it is something that is systematic relative to your brand. So in the case of F1, obviously, the movie has to do with the automotive industry. Obviously, it's F1. Our integration, I think, does a really strong job of connecting us to that industry, again, with very limited clutter. Those kind of integrations, and even the use of where you're seeing Clive appear, is really about that one-to-one marketing. It's really about trying to break through to develop that resonance. Certainly it wouldn't be smart of me to lay out the entire playbook for you, but what I can say is that given the depth and breadth of our business, 1,200 locations, national brand, we still recognize the power of community. And so it really is about winning those local wars for share of mind, share of wallet. And so we're getting very specific with our agencies in terms of geofencing and targeting, using tools like Placer AI to help us build really strong strategies. And again, having the humility to recognize that to do it alone is one thing, but it's a lot more fun and usually a lot more effective to do it with key partners. So we have a number of partnerships involved in Take 5 that help us break through the clutter and really connect the brand on both an emotional and rational level.
So, okay, so let's go back to this idea that, and what's the name of your book? I know you just
The
recently.
name of my book is Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone.
Right. And so this is this idea that you started off with, that you've got to make it really personal. And
Right.
here you're talking about, some people might think it's kind of a boring category, a fast look, oil change or something like that. But you've tried to make this personal, I guess, through this Clive character. Is that like part of how you make it a personal relationship, by building a character there?
Well, I don't think Clive is a character as much as Clive really represents a platform. Um, the human anxiety and the angst when that oil change light comes on, or they look at the sticker and they realize that it's time for them to get their oil changed. There are human truths there that we need to capture. And I think Clive for us offers the opportunity to tap into those human truths and reflect them. Unlike Flo, the progressive lady, or Jake from State Farm, Clive doesn't work for Take 5. Clive as a platform is the embodiment of what is going on in the mindset of the consumer. And so what you've seen with Clive is the pilot episode. As I've come on board and working with our creative agency, we're in the process of kind of mapping what the 10 episode deal will be. Where does that platform go? What are the stories that we're going to tell? It's way too early to share that. Happy to come back on when we've gotten a little further in our journey. But for us, I think what Clive allows us to do, it's a pathway to express what is going through the mind of the consumer when that light comes on, and how to candidly our fast, friendly service solve that tension, both on a practical as well as an emotional level.
Okay, so let's not get into the specifics, but I really like this idea and I kind of want to dig deeper into it. So if you were giving advice to somebody who's trying to build this human connection for a brand, get
Yep.
out of the friend zone, which is your
Yep.
whole mantra, that's what you're trying to do. Would you suggest that people take their brand and put some human face on it in order to, and use that, like you said, as a platform for thinking about the message? Is that kind of one way to implement this idea?
Well, it's a way. I wouldn't recommend it for every brand. I think where I go with it is really understanding the mindset of your customer, and that really what you need to do to move your brand out of the friend zone. It's not enough to have a casual relationship with your consumer. They've really got to be invested in your brand. But there's also a humility that comes with it. As a business that sees customers at best twice a year, we have to recognize our place in the zeitgeist for our customers. And so we have to be very careful in terms of where we talk, how frequently we talk, and what we're saying, in order to be effective and not just be noise. And, as I'm coming on board and looking at our platform, working in our stores, talking to our teams, recognizing that there are opportunities to sort of deepen that. At the same time, let's be real, this is an oil change. And so there's a pragmatic nature to solving a non-discretionary problem that we're doing. So it's not about kind of talking for talking's sake. It's about leveraging human truths to create rational actions in order to stimulate business growth.
Okay, let's look back. I'm curious. I think it's really interesting that a Harvard case was built on on one of your big brands, that Pearl Vision.
Yeah.
Did you exercise these kinds of concepts in those campaigns too?
100%. I mean, eye care is a highly commoditized category. And, Pearl Vision started in 1961 by Stanley Pearl, had really lost its way, had really been building its comp growth based on buy one, get one. And, part of the analysis that the Harvard case study profiled is what was this brand going to do in order to, as I like to say now, move out of the friend zone. We were trying to be everything to everybody before I joined that business. And the reality is that for me in particular, I recognized that we needed to be an eye care first brand. Eye care first, glasses second. Glasses was what we sold. Eye care is what we delivered. And so in developing the pathway for Pearl, it was really about getting into that mindset. What did somebody want when they were trusting somebody, with their eyes? And, trust for me and what we ended up doing at Pearl was all about small moments of care and connection. It wasn't huge grand gestures like BOGO or 50% off. It was about showing that, again, customers that were coming in were going to be treated a certain way, were going to be respected a certain way, and navigated through the journey that they were a part of. We weren't selling them glasses, we were guiding them into their perfect pair.
And so what kind of campaigns did you run when you were there?
So our Clio and Effie award-winning campaign really focused on this. We called it the small moments, thinking small in order to win big. We did an award-winning platform with Billie Jean King, who not only is a cultural icon around the world, but also is famous for the impact that corrective eyewear had on her life. It was showcasing how our doctors went beyond the person and really went to the person behind the eyes, really tapped into what was the angst, the tension, the need base that we were delivering at Pearl Vision. And that really helped distinguish us not only in the category, but also against brands that Estée Exotica also owned, like LensCrafters. And the results were phenomenal. I think most importantly, our trust meter skyrocketed. Our comp growth strong, our appointments strong, but most importantly, I think we regained our reason for being, our raison d'etre in a very commoditized category, and delivered an incredible experience and didn't have to discount because of it.
Yeah, that's a really good story. You mentioned your trust meter. That reminds me of a natural question here. So you get these ideas, move out of the friend zone, try to figure out the way to implement that personal human connection. But then you do have to make sure it's working. So what are the kinds of metrics what does that trust meter mean?
I mean, look, the ultimate metrics are, sales, EBITDA, revenue, traffic. But there are also soft metrics. You're measuring through a brand health tracker that I would suggest that every marketer implements into their business. Sentiment, uneducated brand awareness, educated brand awareness, consideration, intent. You're looking at your Google star scores, which is a really good mirror to the face. It may not be the actuality of what you're delivering, but it's the reality. And it's really important to be looking at that, NPS scores. And then honestly, getting out from behind your computer screen and working in your stores. The most powerful tool that a marketer has at their disposal are their frontline associates. And at Take 5 in particular, our techs embody what our brand is on our best day. And so being able to go into the pit, see what that action is like, listening to the dialogue they're having with our customers, you get a sense of what we stand for in living, breathing embodiments by doing that. And my job is to bring that back, figure out how we can harness it and reflect it in our campaigns.
I know you have to go, but I have one last question as you're talking about that, because you're talking about very human things, getting into into the store or the retail environment, talking to your frontline people, finding the human connection. And everybody today is talking about generative AI and algorithms. Can you just make a last statement on how you think those two worlds come together?
Yeah, I mean, look, technology is an enablement of us to work hopefully smarter and faster. But if you take generative AI, ChatGPT is really about inputs. And it's going to give you a very antiseptic diagnosis. It lacks emotion. And our job as marketers is to really blend both art and science. I love what AI can do for us. It could allow us to test, it could allow us to iterate, it could provide a mirror up to your face. And that's not just in business, but if you've ever had to write a very challenging email, I highly suggest putting it into ChatGPT to really help you understand what are you saying, both factually and emotionally. For us, I think it's a tool in the toolbox. And you've got to use it for good, not for evil. And it's job of marketers like myself to really figure out how to activate these to allow us to work smarter and faster. But absolutely nothing replaces getting out into the field. I worked as an Avon lady when I was at Avon. I worked in Victoria's Secrets.
Wow, that must have
I
been
worked
fun.
as an optician in Pearl Vision, and even within my first 4 weeks, I've been in the pit, under the car. Although my wife will still not let me touch the automobile that we have at home, at least I got a sense of what we do every day, and I think that is such an incredible hands-on reason to be excited about not only Take Five, but excited about the businesses that you have the privilege to be a part of. Billie Jean King likes to say pressure is a privilege. The pressure that I put on myself is really to understand the business from the inside out and understand the consumer from heart and then mind and then wallet. And that's what I'm in the process of doing right now.
I just love this. Because everybody is talking about generative AI, and you're digging deep into the importance of the human connection, the human experience, and you're not negating the importance of generative AI. It's a tool, like you said, in the toolbox, but it's not the only thing. And I know you have to run, so let me just remind people of your book again, Moving Your Brand Out of the Friend Zone. And where can people go to find out what's happening with Clive and what's happening with Take Five Oil Change?
Sure. I mean, obviously, with the depth and breadth of Take Five, it's pretty easy to find us. You can take a look at take5.com. You can visit our LinkedIn page. I would imagine in the next 6 to 12 months, you will hear more about some of the initiatives that we're taking on and that some ideas that I have that I'm in the process of kind of working through with the team. I think the most important thing about Take Five is really that we are a challenger brand. And we really are focusing on delivering that incredible experience. Every single car that comes in is being treated as if they're the only car that's coming in that day. And that's a recipe for continued success in any business model.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you very much for taking some time out to help us with this segment of our program. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
I'm Barbara Kahn, and this is Marketing Matters. Today we had Doug Zarkin, the CMO of Take Five Oil Change. That's all we have time for today. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week. Till then, this has been Marketing Matters on the Wharton Podcast Network.